Hey, folks, welcome back. We're back after a couple of weeks off due to travel and chaos and me writing a damn book and Andrew fleeing the country briefly, not for any bad reason. But welcome back, Andrew. Let's dive in, guys. We're going to, as usual, folks, on Behind the Numbers. Andrew and I like to tear through what's going on in the polling in this country and give you some perspectives on where the numbers really are. So, Andrew, let's start out. Where should we start out?
I think we want to start out talking about the economy and how people are feeling.
Yeah, which is not great.
Inflation, I think, has really started to impact the polls.
As you predicted about 8 weeks ago.
Well, I mean, we were talking about this from the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
this was going to be the time when inflation started to hit. Wouldn't be the immediate crash that some people were sort of fantasizing about. But it really has started to sting. May of last year, we had polls that said the economy was about 35% of people, about 35% of Republicans were saying the economy was improving. And that was as opposed to, I'm sorry, this is the opposite. About 35% of Democrats said the economy was improving under Biden, about 4% of Republicans. We have the exact opposite situation now, where about 39% of Republicans are saying the economy is improving, while about 4% of Democrats say the economy is getting worse. This is down from 60% at the beginning of the year from our YouGov polling that we were looking at.
Right.
So Republicans are starting to feel this thing too, and it's sort of undeniable. And I think it all comes down to inflation.
Yeah, and I got to say, if you looked at that at the stack rank of that list, inflation, tariffs, those are two things that are the undeniables. Those are two things that you are, if you are in the grocery store, you can't spin that away in your head. You can't go, oh no, that's not really happening, because it is really happening.
I think
interest rates are like a less common thing you would do.
Right.
That's when you buy a house, buy a car, get something on credit. Those things are less impactful to people. But man, even Republicans, 31% of Republicans are talking about inflation. That is a hard hit to Trump.
So this is people who said that their household costs have gone up by more than $100, and this is a metric that's important to pay attention to, because that for a lot of people can be a lot of money.
Yeah.
So 29% of Republicans say their costs have gone up by $100 to $250, but look at the bottom of this. 12% say it's gone up by $500 to almost $750.
And this does not include the fact that as the ACA incentives expire, this is going to explode.
Right.
It's sort of a doom loop. Family monthly call. It is doom loop. Yes. Yes, it is a doom loop.
And this is what baffles me. I think that maybe congressional Republicans were banking on people not connecting, tariffs to inflation. And so they let Trump have all this power. It really has backfired. And I think people, this is why they're so desperate to, call it the Hate America rally. They're pulling up every, all this kind of things. They're so desperate to take away, they're so desperate to do away with these, House districts that are majority minority. This is why they're so desperate to stomp on freedom of speech ahead of this election. I mean, they are terrified because they cannot escape this economic, pessimism they've created.
I think it's funny because we always go back when you looked at the numbers that existed at the end of 2024 and the end of the campaign, and the exit polling we got at the end of the campaign. That economic question really pushed a lot of those voters over the line for Trump. In the end, that economic question, in the end, was a deal maker for him.
What we still haven't seen budge in the polling, which I think is interesting, is that when you ask people who do you trust more on the economy, Republicans still have a pretty strong edge on that question.
It is interesting. I think that is troubling as well.
I think that probably has to do with the Democratic Party's approval rating is at its lowest point right now. It's not getting any better. Although that is, of course, contrasted by the fact that Democrats are winning in the congressional ballot, generic ballot.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because as and one of the things that I think is really important is, while Republicans have their number for what it is, the Democrats' number, the Democrats' overall approval number sucks, in part because Democrats are pissed at the leadership of their own party.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that is something that's a sort of intractable problem. That's not one you and I are going to solve today. That's a sort of intractable issue for them in some ways. But the generic ballot has been pretty consistently leaning toward the Democrats in the last few months now, and we're getting into a pattern now where I don't think it's the lead is not an apocalyptic lead yet, but it is
right.
It fits with what we're talking about, that the Democrats are consistently, looking like they're going to hold an advantage in that survey.
Right.
And you look at the two, Qantas and RMG are both Republican leaning firms. So let's, we're not pretending that they
right.
are
Yeah.
the
So
same.
we are
not the same.
No, we had the generic ballot metric. And then soon enough in the next month, we'll have some real test cases for how Democrats will perform in statewide elections next year.
Yeah.
And I think that what's not factored into a generic ballot is the fact that Trump is not on the ballot. I don't think people are necessarily seeing it that way.
But I think it's a huge factor, because look, what drove 2018 and what drove the Lincoln Project's amazing success in 2022, where we won 17 out of the races, out of the 21 races we targeted, is that with him off the ballot, Republicans have to own the crazy on their own.
Right.
They have to own all this economic damage this time. In 2022, it was they were having to own the crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
And own the bad COVID response and all that stuff, or bad economic response, not COVID, excuse me, bad economic responses, all that stuff. But now they're going to have to go out and try to pull the wagon of, oh yeah, the trade war is going great. Oh yeah, the economy's doing great. Oh yeah, inflation's totally under control. Oh yeah, your housing market is definitely not collapsing underneath you. So I think that is a really good point, Andrew, that without him on the ballot, he doesn't catalyze people the same way. He doesn't get that low propensity 1 and 2 propensity voter turnout the same way.
The third factor, I think, would be the shutdown. And I think across the board, you can see you said this at the beginning of the shutdown, and this is historically true, that shutdown polling tends to be relatively stagnant. Who gets blamed at the beginning is that blame through the whole shutdown.
And Andrew, we have nine. Is it 9 surveys now we have?
I think it's 9 and counting surveys.
Right.
Where Republicans are consistently blamed at a higher rate than Democrats for the shutdown. That's not to say that a lot of people don't blame both sides.
Sure.
I think especially with Mike Johnson's messaging kind of falling flat. The blitz goes on with him. He just keeps showing up on the show.
But that's the thing that I think is really important for people to understand. Johnson's messaging is not to convince independents and Democrats. It's to hold the MAGA base.
Right.
It's to keep Trump happy.
Right.
So while he's doing that, it does not work for them to try to just spin it that way over and over again, when Democrats and independents know where the blame lies. And so it is one of those things where the cohesiveness of the MAGA base for them is a weapon, but it's also a weak spot, because if he varies from the message of, oh, evil Chuck Schumer wants to give illegal immigrants free health care.
You notice how they're not talking about that much anymore.
No, I noticed it. You know why? Because while it popped, I heard the origin story of that is that Tony the pollster had it in a focus group, and they were all like, that's the line. And Stephen Miller got a hold of it. Right. And that's the line. And it was a line, but it's not a believable line.
It does seem like a long time since I've seen a Republican, messaging strategy sort of blow up in their faces as bad as this one has. And that's
a good point.
And this is following on Epstein. It does seem like we've talked about the fractures in the coalition. These are the things that break the coalition apart.
Yeah.
And I don't foresee Vance putting together the pieces in 2028. So we
Yeah,
are
I
kind of
mean,
witnessing, you know.
I think there's something that a very telling number that I spotted in the yesterday's, excuse me, St. Pete poll of
Mhm.
Florida about the Florida governor's race. Trump's approval among Republicans in Florida is down to 82%.
Whew.
There he goes. Oh my God, 82%. That's a huge number. Guys,
I mean,
it's down from 97.
yeah, he
It's down from 97. Ron DeSantis has a higher approval rating in Florida than Donald Trump does right now.
that poll also alarmingly showed that Byron Donalds was leading the
Oh,
primary field.
I think Trump's endorsement of Donald's is a big deal. And I think when Trump percolates it down and this poll hits his desk and he sees that DeSantis has a higher approval rating in Florida, he's going to go and step all over everybody and scream and shout. Yeah, but look, Byron Donalds and his friend Corey Mills, who just got a restraining order. The Republicans know Byron Donalds has some stuff in his Oppo file that everybody's whispering about and everybody's chatting about, and it's like, I want to see how that works north of I-4. Folks, I-4 is the major highway that runs east-west across the great state of Florida,
Right.
and north of I-4 is much whiter, much less Hispanic, and a lot of those good old boys north of I-4 are still not down with the black guy.
No,
and that's just I mean, we come from up this part of Florida, golly, because we know this. We know from this area.
Yeah,
there's going to be a moment of like, oh, that fella,
right. I think it fueled a lot of the angst about Andrew Gillum, although he had a role to play
on the backside. Yeah, on the flip side too.
Right.
And by the way, a lot of those good old boys up in North Florida, folks, are still registered as Democrats, but they vote Republican consistently. Yep. My fault. Long story. So I do want to talk about two other governor's races that we are paying attention to for this year. You've got some numbers out of New Jersey.
Yeah, we do.
Some numbers out of Virginia.
We've had Mikie Sherrill leading in these polls, and I think a lot of Democrats are sort of tearing their hair a little bit. They're very scared about this. I would say that they should not be. The environment is very bad for Republicans. Mm-hmm. If you look at the likely voters in a lot of these polls, for people who don't know, most polls break their horse race questions into likely voters and registered voters. Likely voters are the more valuable metric because, of course, they're more likely to vote. And she's leading by, I think, 2 more points with likely voters in this poll than she is with registered voters. I'm quite confident. I think Sherrill has stepped on his own message. I think that
he's a train wreck.
Gateway project cancellation hurts a lot of New Jerseyans, and Sherrill's made hay from that. I do not think the environment is good for, we do see tightening polls like this Fox News poll shows.
As you would expect, folks, it's October.
Right, exactly. But where's his big Oppo dump? I haven't seen it yet. I think the Oppo is sort of coming down on his head.
Yeah.
And you can see she's up 8 points with likely voters in September. And now we're at 5 in October. That makes sense to me. And I think that could honestly be the genuine election outcome. Fox News, we've said this before, actually does conduct a pretty high quality poll.
Yeah, as much as Trump hates Fox News polling, it's actually not a bad poll, generally speaking. I'm curious what you think, and this is a theory you and I were texting about this morning. I have a theory of the case that and it was probably in the form of Trump's political team. Newark has a worse crime problem than Chicago does. I'm curious, and we were talking about this. There's been no giant ICE raids running in the last few weeks in Newark. They haven't had National Guard troops in the streets of Newark. They don't seem to be doing the same hyper focus on a blue city with a crime problem and an immigration issue that they are in Chicago and LA and Portland. My theory of the case, I think I want to get your thoughts on this. I think they did that so they could give Chitterelli a little more running room and not give Sherrill something to beat him over the head with.
Trump will do anything to influence the outcomes of these elections. Stephen Miller will do anything to influence the outcomes of these elections. They do not care about free and fair elections. They will manipulate them in any way they can possibly come up with.
Yeah.
So I think
Probably
that's
important to remember that,
plausible.
folks.
Yeah. I think that's very plausible. And it is fairly evident, they haven't sent, National Guard into any of these Republican cities aside from Memphis, where they were invited, which to my mind, it makes it a slightly different story.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised whatsoever if they were trying to,
to juice this by not having feet in the fire.
On the flip side of that, the canceling the Gateway project, leaves a lot of people without their paychecks.
Yep.
And it's the densest state in the country.
Yeah, it is. There's no doubt the population density in New Jersey is, as they say, assholes and elbows, because you're always touching one or the other.
Canceling transportation projects doesn't affect just the people who work there. It's everybody in the whole state.
Right.
I think you'll see the impact of the shutdown in this election. That is my prediction here.
Well, and I think we're going to see that in Virginia as well. I mean, yes, I think in Virginia, the big oppo drop in Virginia was the AG's race and these text messages, which Republicans have tried to turn into the entire race.
Right.
But, I think what we learned was that Winsome Sears is not a great candidate. She's sort of psychologically brittle.
She was dreadful on the debate stage.
And her performance in the debate, I watched it. I didn't watch it when it was live. I watched it later. And I was like, oh, God. Chris LaCivita or whoever prepped her gave her a bunch of talking points, and she yelled them over and over again.
Terrible.
It wasn't an argument. It wasn't a discussion. It was just like, ah!
I think one thing to keep in mind, you've seen over the last week or so, the polls tightening in Virginia. There has not been a nonpartisan poll coming out of Virginia.
Right. And the Trafalgar poll came out of Virginia showing it like a 3-point race.
Yeah.
Trafalgar polls, folks, is an in-house Republican Party poll.
Yeah. Yeah. I do not see this. Once again, Democrats should not be very worried about this. I think they should be much more confident in displaying that confidence.
Yeah. I mean, LP and LDI have been on the ground in Virginia doing our work quietly. But we've been putting in some resources there and helping some folks there. And I think that when this is over, I think you're right. I think we're going to see Spanberger take this, in part just because, folks, it proves one of those things that we were talking about a little while ago. When Trump's not on the ballot, Trumpism is a much harder sell.
Yes. Winsome
Sears sounds Trumpy, is Trumpy, acts Trumpy, but it is a harder sell for a candidate who isn't named Donald Trump and doesn't have a chingina and a white wig on.
I mean, on top of that, it's been sort of a hell year for Virginians. I mean,
between Doge and all these other federal shutdown cuts and Russ Vought is actually, I think, doing a favor for Spanberger right now by cutting people who live in the state of Virginia.
Yep. Yeah.
She now has a hook to run the last 2 weeks of this campaign on of, I'm going to fight these sumbitches because they're hurting. This is crazy, and they're hurting you.
Trump doesn't want her to be governor. I think that's what she'd be saying.
Trump doesn't want her to be governor.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Donald Trump and Stephen Miller and Russ Vought are fighting every day against me.
This is what we talk about when we talk about.
I'll be a leader for Virginia.
Yeah.
We'll restore these cuts. We'll take you to court. All that stuff. I think it really adds up to. I think she's been a very good candidate. I think her performance in the debates, she clearly had some insight on how to get into Sears's head.
She did.
And how to mess with her, which I thought was very good. And I think she clearly has a more cohesive vision of how to run this campaign with the reality. And folks, if you don't know Virginia politics, there are 7 counties in Northern Virginia that are about 62 to 65% of the vote. Depends on how you do the math. The rest of Virginia is Alabama.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, Southwest Virginia is a place where people are like, oh, that Stephen Miller's not going far enough. I wish ICE had death camp. It is very, 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 very hyper conservative. But in the northern part of Virginia, they are taking the 3 congressional seats we're going to target next year in Virginia, right? Are all places in Northern Virginia and coastal Virginia that have been deeply affected by the cuts.
Right. Yeah. And, it's naval stations. It's, all the various.
It's Norfolk, it's Langley Air Force Base. All those places have taken gigantic hits.
So it's not just the bordering area of Washington D.C. It's
Right.
all this. The really metropolitan parts of the state are being hammered by the shutdown and
Yep.
Doge. So this is what we talk about when we talk about a bad environment for Republicans.
Yep.
It is, and these will be the first two test cases for New Jersey and Virginia.
Do we have any numbers out of what New Hampshire is looking like?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't pull any for this.
I just thought about, I meant to mention it earlier, but I just thought about it just now because that's another state that has some weird mojo about it. And Sununu has a vaunted family name in that state. And has but it's a state that's got, yes, it's conservative in some levels, but it's also Boston suburbs, essentially.
Yeah.
So, but I haven't seen any numbers out of there in the last couple of weeks. So I'm going to presume that it's probably close to a tie ball game.
I would guess as much. I don't see any recent polling.
Excuse me. Whew. Sorry.
University of New Hampshire.
But yeah, I feel like a lot of the things that have happened in the last few weeks have not improved the environment for Republicans. Since last we were with you guys on the air, I don't think there's been a lot of significant reset of the messaging environment. If anything, and I will tell you guys, one of the things that I learned a long time ago from a very old hand in this business was watch real estate markets. And if real estate markets start to get weird, the politics get weirder faster. And the real estate markets right now, like if there's a boom, you can expect an area to become much more Republican much faster than you even think.
Right.
That is how you could trace Republican voter reg in Florida with property price upticks.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine that.
But right now, you've got properties all over South Florida that are on the market 6, 8, 10 months now before they sell.
And
you've got home prices going down 10, 20, 30%. And that uncertainty is where people have most of their money, folks.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody says, I feel great about America, I bought a house for $600,000 and then it's worth $1 million a few years later, they're thinking, yeah, go Trump.
Right. Yeah.
But if that $1 million house goes back down to $600,000, they can't blame the Democrats in these red states. So there's a lot of market uncertainty in Miami, Orlando, Tampa, Dallas, Austin. Austin's property market is about to take a giant, nosedive. And you're seeing it in places where the Republican Party has made enormous strides. Southwest Florida, Naples, Cape Coral, those areas, folks, are so MAGA, it would make I literally cannot travel to those places. That is denied territory. I have to go in disguise. I'm going to go
too close to the
Flynnverse
center of it all.
but yeah, I mean, look, we're seeing that real estate number is I've never built an index on. I've actually never built an index about how to track what's the correlation on the polling, but it was one of those old hands who said that to me years ago, and I remembered it my whole career. Somebody told me this in 1990, and I was like, oh shit, that's really
we can probably figure that out.
The other thing I think that is in the air right now that we haven't really correlated for 2026 is the ongoing ICE stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We've already seen all Trump's gains with Hispanic voters gone. Mike Madrid and I had talked about that on the air a couple of weeks ago. They're just vaporized. They're just
you
gone.
can see that in all the polls. I was looking at a poll out of Texas.
Yep.
And I sent that to you. Where Latino voters had Trump. I think they voted for him by +9 in 2024. Their vote choice now would have been +12 Harris. It is a massive reversal, and that
I would say they have entered the finding out phase.
Yes, and there was the Economist YouGov poll this week had 40% of people saying that less than half of those deported were criminals.
Yeah, well, and guess what? It's really less than 10% are criminals.
Yeah,
but
40% of people said, or I'm sorry, 51% of people said that ICE is using too much force. I think 60, 70% of people said they should be required to wear uniforms. You know, ICE is a very toxic asset for Trump and Republicans to be holding right now.
It's interesting though. I mean, I mean, and maybe this is because Miller's fucking
He's
psychotic.
psychotic.
Um, but they seem to be trying to like make the ICE question the centerpiece of 26.
Well, I think that's about the crackdown more than anything else. You know, we got No Kings coming up this weekend.
Yeah, we do.
It's going to be, I think, pretty enormous.
And yeah, if No Kings is a terrorist operation, then sign me up.
And, you know, I want people to think about this. First of all, what you're going to see on the streets is mostly 50-plus boomer Democrats.
Yep.
I do not think it's going to be Black Bloc. I do not think it's going to be the Communist Party of America.
There's only like 100 Black Bloc people in the country.
Exactly. You know, what I think, you know, part of this is, I think part of the factor that's really going to bring this all down, Trump down in many ways, and the MAGA movement, you cannot have, at the same time, you cannot have a massive crackdown, you know, descent into fascism while you have so much discontent in the street and a failing economy.
Right.
You know,
right.
This is going to be on display this weekend. Millions of people are going to be in the streets. And if it becomes violent, it will probably be because ICE or CBP or the National Guard is in a situation where they are exacerbating tensions.
100%.
Pretty divided on this in the polling. So this week we had 39% of people say that the protests have been mostly violent, with 40% saying mostly peaceful, and the rest they say they don't know.
That's pretty like strongly correlated to partisan splits.
I would imagine so. So we'll see how it plays out this weekend. The other thing I want people to remember is the last memory of civil unrest that most people have in this country was during the last Trump administration, whether it was January 6th or the riots in 2020. Yep. He caused it last time, and he will be the cause of it if it happens this time. Of course, they're trying to pin the blame on George Soros or Antifa or whatever crazy fantasy they're putting out. But
yeah, I think the first No Kings shook them, and I hope that people this time, and none of the circumstances on the ground are better for Trump since the first No Kings rally. And when I went to the one here in Tallahassee, the first one, on a day it was pouring down rain, thunderstorms, there were 5,000 people in front of the Capitol flooding up and down Monroe Street and Appalachian Parkway, and I couldn't. I've never seen anything like it.
We have a clear and pleasant weekend this weekend, so Trump should be terrified.
Yeah, he should be very, very disturbed by the whole thing. So what are you watching? What are you watching in the next couple of weeks that people should be paying attention to? Either things that are going to drive the numbers or specific numbers to come.
Right, like we talked about, No Kings. I think that will make the headlines for a while.
Yep.
You know, of course, we got these two elections, or more than two elections, Virginia and New Jersey elections that we're watching coming up very soon. In terms of driving the numbers, I think the Venezuela stuff is going to be on a lot of people's minds. What's happening at the Pentagon is pretty scary. You know, Trump promised no new wars, and this is quite evidently the opposite of that.
Right. Well, there's a rumor making the rounds in my old school DoD circles this morning that they are going to call up troops for Gaza as peacekeepers. Let's see how that works out. That's going to, you know what? Nothing goes wrong when we deploy troops to the Middle East in the middle of a sectarian conflict. Nothing could go wrong.
It's baffling. I think that's going to hurt them. I
think the Venezuela story, you know, you got the guy, the head of Southcom quitting because he won't be a part of lying about it.
Right.
And I think the cracks inside the military are deeper than people know so far. It is the one institution that if it really goes wrong, it really goes wrong. But right now, and folks, it's not as big as we want. Look, I would like all the Joint Chiefs to go, fuck you, I'm out of this thing. I'm not doing this. Their argument to themselves is wrong, but it is an argument they're making to themselves, which is, if I don't, someone crazier will replace me. That's a moral tightrope right there, brother.
And, you know, the other side of this is Trump is just destroying our military readiness. Like, you know, having the military deployed for domestic operations is bad enough.
Oh yeah.
And this is much worse.
No, it's going to be much, much worse. And folks, we'll be here tracking it every Friday, giving you the inside track. I have a book deadline November 1st, but I'm going to be here next Friday because I'm on the glide slope. I'm getting it done. I'm going to land 90 plus thousand words, and then my editors will tear at it like wild beasts on the plane.
Well, good luck.
Thank you. How's my granddaughter?
She's doing great. Actually,
all right.
Cool,
I saw some pictures in the chat. She's good.
Yeah.
All righty. We will see you very soon. And folks, we'll see you next week. Folks, check out Andrew's Substack where he writes about polling. He does also write about polling on Lincoln Square. You can check out my Against All Enemies Substack. You can check out the Lincoln Project podcast, the Enemies List podcast, the Elephant in the Room podcast, the Breakdown on Thursday nights, the Strategy Session on Tuesday nights, and Lincoln Square, Lincoln Project. We are continuing in this fight every single day. It is worth it. You are worth it. Get yourselves out to No Kings this weekend, folks. It's going to be a big weekend. It's going to be a nice weekend in most of the country. And show folks what you really feel about Donald Trump. Be loud, be present, be peaceful. See you soon.